Welcome to the deep dive. If you're tuning in right now, I already know something about you.
Oh, absolutely.
You're a learner. You're that person who just loves picking apart everyday life.
Dissecting those little things most people just gloss right over.
Right. And you're always looking for that next fascinating perspective. So maybe you're prepping for a big meeting, or maybe you just want to keep your brain sharp on your commute. Or maybe you're just insanely curious.
Which is the best reason to be here.
Exactly. Whatever brought you here, you are going to find today's topic surprisingly rich. Because today we are taking something that, it looks incredibly simple on the surface, and we're peeling back the layers.
You really are.
So what exactly is our mission today? We are analyzing a 3-part transcript series from an educational show called Mr. English Channel.
That is correct. And just to give you the lay of the land, our source material today consists of 3 brief, highly interconnected dialogues. They're between 2 characters named Emily and Paul. Now, on a literal level, these transcripts are designed to teach daily routines, the vocabulary of bad habits, and the grammatical mechanics of frequency adverbs.
Language learners.
Yes, specifically for language learners. The dialogue covers the entire arc of a day. So, waking up, commuting, going to work, and then winding down at the end of the evening. It's a very structured, progressive set of lessons aimed at providing foundational English skills.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if you just glance at these pages, you might think you are looking at a dry, utilitarian language lesson.
Right, like standard textbook fare.
Yeah, exactly. Like, hello, my name is Emily, I go to work, that kind of thing. But read it a little closer, and it is so much more than that. It's actually this brilliant, highly relatable character study.
It really is.
The writers have cleverly disguised a deep, almost philosophical contrast between 2 completely opposite lifestyles right under our noses.
They absolutely have.
We have the ultimate aspirational morning person on one side, and then the chaotic, slightly stressed out night owl on the other. It is an exploration of human behavior masquerading as a grammar lesson. And we're going to start by looking at one side of that coin. Let us dive into the anatomy of aspiration.
The Emily side.
Yes, let's talk about Emily and her absolutely pristine morning.
It truly is positioned as the ideal. The first thing we learn about Emily in the very first dialogue is her wake-up time. She tells Paul that she usually wakes up at 6:30 a.m.
Early.
Very early. And she follows that up with a very telling statement. She says, "I love the quiet morning." Right away, the text is doing heavy lifting to establish Emily not just as a character, but as an aspirational archetype. Waking up early isn't a chore for her, it's a source of joy.
Yeah.
From a psychological standpoint, this immediately aligns her with what we might call a strong morning chronotype. Her circadian rhythm, the internal 24-hour clock that dictates our sleep-wake cycle, is perfectly synchronized with the demands of a traditional societal schedule.
I have to pause you there, though, because when I read that she loves the quiet morning and wakes up at 6:30, I immediately felt a twinge of skepticism.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It feels almost performative, doesn't it? She doesn't just wake up at 6:30. She doesn't just slap the alarm and roll out of bed like a normal human being.
It's true.
Paul actually asks her, "Do you get out of bed immediately?" And her answer is what really caught my eye. She says no. She stays in bed for exactly 5 minutes to think.
Yes, to think.
Just to think. Now, my initial reaction to that was, come on, Emily, that is a disguised snooze button.
That's a very fair assessment.
Right. So is the text actually portraying genuine mindfulness here? Or is this just an idealized, highly sanitized version of morning grogginess for the sake of the lesson?
That is an excellent pushback. It does sound suspiciously like hitting snooze, but rebranded as meditation.
Exactly.
But let's look at the neurobiology of waking up to understand why the writers might have included this specific detail. When we transition from sleep to wakefulness, we enter something called the hypnopompic state.
The hypnopompic state.
Yes. During this time, our brain waves are shifting from the slow delta waves of deep sleep into the alpha and eventually beta waves of alert consciousness. It is a highly liminal space.
Okay, I follow.
The writers didn't have her say, "I wake up and stumble to the shower." They gave her a 5-minute pause for reflection. That 5-minute window of just lying there to think before the water, before the physical movement, sets a tone of extreme intentionality.
Intentionality.
Yes. Even if in reality it is just shaking off sleep inertia, framing it as time to think transforms a moment of physiological vulnerability into a moment of psychological control.
Framing is everything. It completely changes the narrative from "I am too tired to move" to "I am choosing to be still."
Precisely.
And her intentionality doesn't stop there.
Yeah.
After this 5-minute hypnopompic pause, she drinks a big glass of water and then does yoga for 15 minutes. She specifically tells Paul the yoga wakes up my body.
Which is mechanistically accurate. Hydrating after 8 hours of sleep and engaging in physical movement stimulates the sympathetic nervous system.
It gets things going.
It increases heart rate and blood flow, essentially sending a physiological signal to the body that the rest period is over. By including these specific health-conscious steps, the curriculum is implicitly teaching the learner not just English vocabulary, but Western, modern cultural norms surrounding wellness and self-care.
And speaking of cultural norms, we have to talk about her breakfast. Because after she showers, we get to the food. And Paul actually gives her routine a brand name, which is hilarious.
He does.
He asks her, what is a standard Emily breakfast? And she replies that she usually has oatmeal with blueberries and a hazelnut latte.
A hazelnut latte.
Hazelnut latte. That is so incredibly specific. Why not just say, I eat breakfast and drink coffee?
The vocabulary choices here are absolutely deliberate, and they offer a fascinating look into modern language acquisition strategies.
How so?
Well, in a standard older language curriculum from perhaps 30 years ago, the dialogue would almost certainly be, I eat cereal and drink coffee.
Right, very basic.
It's functional, it gets the point across, but it is completely devoid of personality. It is what linguists might call low arousal text.
Low arousal, meaning it's boring.
Exactly. It doesn't stimulate any emotional or sensory engagement. By specifying oatmeal with blueberries and a hazelnut latte, the writers are utilizing high arousal vocabulary. They are painting a vivid, multi-sensory picture.
It definitely paints a picture. You can visualize the exact aesthetic of her kitchen just from the phrase hazelnut latte. It feels like something out of a lifestyle influencer's feed.
Precisely. It elevates the character from a two-dimensional language tool to a lifestyle icon for the learner.
That's so smart.
Furthermore, we know from cognitive psychology that memory retention is vastly improved when information is tied to rich, specific details rather than abstract concepts.
So you remember it better.
Yes. The learner is much more likely to remember the structure of the sentence because the imagery of blueberries and hazelnut is distinct. It is also an observation of how aspiration is encoded into language. A hazelnut latte implies a level of curation, time, and perhaps economic stability that a simple cup of instant coffee does not.
It's the semiotics of breakfast. She is signaling that her life is organized and deliberate. And then we move to her commute, which completely reinforces this.
It does.
At 8 a.m., she leaves the house, she takes the bus, and she reads a book. Her own description of this commute is that it is very peaceful.
If we look at the entire sequence, the 6:30 wake up, the 5 minutes of thought, the hydration, the yoga, the curated breakfast, and finally reading a book on the bus, it forms what we can call an unbroken chain of organized, peaceful intentions.
An unbroken chain, I like that.
There is no friction in Emily's morning. The commute is particularly interesting. Often, a commute is viewed as a stressful liminal period, a frustrating gap between home and work.
Yeah, traffic, crowded trains.
Exactly. But by taking the bus and reading a book, Emily is engaging in cognitive decoupling. She is disconnecting from the immediate stress of travel and utilizing the time for intellectual enrichment. Every action flows logically and harmoniously into the next, creating a foundation of calm for the rest of her day.
Which brings up an interesting reflection for you listening right now. When you hear about Emily's routine, the 5 minutes of mindfulness, the perfectly timed hazelnut latte, the peaceful reading on the bus, how does it make you feel?
That's a great question to ask.
Do you relate to it?
No.
Are you the person who has engineered an unbroken chain of peaceful intentions? Or does hearing about this highly curated morning make you feel a little inadequate? Does it feel rigidly performative, almost like a standard that is impossible to maintain every single day?
It can be quite intimidating.
Because the writers of Mr. English Channel seem to know exactly how intimidating Emily's perfection might be. They aren't just serving up an unattainable ideal without balance. And that is why, in the second part of the series, they introduce us to the ultimate chaotic foil. Let's transition over and look at Paul's night owl reality.
Paul serves as the perfect structural and narrative foil to Emily, where her morning is characterized by intentionality and proactive choices. His is characterized by delay and reactivity.
Total opposite.
Yes, he explicitly admits that he is a night owl, finding the mornings incredibly difficult. The mechanics of his morning highlight this contrast immediately, fundamentally shifting the vocabulary from terms of peace to terms of stress.
The mechanics of his morning are probably going to sound a lot more familiar to a lot of people. It's the classic snooze button lifestyle.
Very common.
His alarm rings at 7:45 a.m., which, let's point out, is already an hour and 15 minutes later than Emily's wake-up time. But he doesn't get up. He delays it. He tells her, I usually get up at 8:15. That is 30 minutes of just languishing in bed. And then he drops the line that defines his entire morning existence. I am always in a hurry.
Let's break down what is happening during that 30-minute delay between 7.45 and 8.15. From a sleep science perspective, Paul is battling severe sleep inertia.
Sleep inertia.
Yes. When you wake up to an alarm and immediately go back to sleep, you are often plunging your brain back into the beginning of a new sleep cycle. When the alarm goes off again 30 minutes later, you are interrupting deeper sleep, which leaves you feeling significantly groggier than if you had just gotten up at 7.45.
Wow, so he's actually making it worse.
Much worse. The contrast with Emily's hypnopompic thinking time is stark. Emily uses the transitional wake-up period to assert control. Paul uses it to avoid reality, which paradoxically makes his reality much harder to deal with once he finally gets up.
That makes so much sense. He is basically digging himself into a deeper physiological hole by hitting snooze.
Oh.
And because of that lost time, the idea of a standard Emily breakfast is completely out of the question.
Completely.
When Emily asks him if he has time for breakfast, he says, no, I just grab a banana and drive to work.
This beautifully illustrates a cascading effect. The decision to delay waking up guarantees that the rest of his morning will be rushed, less mindful, and entirely reactive.
The unbroken chain of stress.
Exactly. We discussed earlier how Emily's morning lacked friction. Paul's morning is entirely friction. He is experiencing decision fatigue before he even leaves the house.
Yeah.
He isn't reading a book peacefully on a bus. He is navigating traffic in a car while eating the most functionally basic, zero-prep food available, a single piece of fruit.
Right.
The vocabulary shifts from hazelnut latte to grab a banana. It is survival mode versus thriving mode.
Grabbing a banana on the way out the door really is the universal symbol of I overslept and my life is in shambles right now.
It really is.
But I want to push back on the idea that Paul is just a complete mess.
Yeah.
Because the text actually gives him a lot of credit later in the day. Once he actually gets to work, he seems to get it together.
He does recover.
He starts work at 9 a.m., he checks his emails first, goes to meetings, and then he has lunch at 12:30 p.m. with his office friends. Yeah. And then he finishes at 6 p.m.
A very standard workday.
Right. But look at what happens in his evening. After a full day of work, he goes to the gym, then he goes home and he cooks dinner.
Right.
And not just any dinner. He specifically tells Emily he made pasta with fresh basil last night.
That is a crucial narrative detail, and it prevents the dialogue from becoming a simplistic morality play where the early bird is good and the night owl is bad.
Yeah, he's not just lazy.
Exactly. The writers are careful not to depict Paul as lazy or incapable. Going to the gym after a full 9-hour workday and cooking a meal from scratch with fresh ingredients. Fresh basil, specifically, which again mirrors Emily's elevated vocabulary choice of the hazelnut latte, demonstrates that Paul actually has a highly productive and capable routine.
The fresh basil really is his hazelnut latte.
It is. It shows that it is simply that his energy peaks at a completely different time of day than Emily's.
He is thriving at 7 p.m., while Emily is probably already winding down and preparing for her next 6:30 a.m. wake-up. He clearly has the capacity for intentionality. He just applies it to his evenings instead of his mornings.
That is a great way to put it.
But then we get to the core of Paul's issue. The real reason his mornings are a disaster. Emily asks him about his sleep schedule, and he admits that he doesn't go to sleep early. He stays up late, often until midnight, to play his guitar.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the writers are presenting a classic behavioral cause and effect loop. Emily accurately points this out to him. She plays the role of the observant outsider, saying, "Midnight, that's why you were tired in the morning."
She calls him out on it.
She does. Playing his guitar until midnight is the exact root cause of why his circadian rhythm is misaligned with his alarm clock, why he is hitting snooze at 7.45, why he is always in a hurry, and why he is eating a banana in the car. It is a self-perpetuating cycle of evening autonomy and morning consequence.
And this brings up such an interesting psychological phenomenon. I want you to think about your own evenings. Are you pulling a Paul? Because there is an actual term for what he is doing, right? Revenge, bedtime procrastination.
Yes, that is a highly relevant concept here. Revenge bedtime procrastination refers to the phenomenon where people who feel they have little control over their daytime hours refuse to go to sleep early in order to regain a sense of freedom during late-night hours.
Exactly. It's not just about wanting to play the guitar. It's a rebellion.
A rebellion against the schedule.
Right. You work hard all day from 9 to 6. You force yourself to go to the gym. You make your pasta with fresh basil because you are trying to be a responsible adult. And then you look at the clock, it's 9:30 p.m., and you realize you haven't had a single minute just for yourself. So you stay up until midnight playing the guitar or watching a show or reading. You are actively sacrificing tomorrow's morning peace just to reclaim a few hours of your own time today.
It is a psychological trade-off. The revenge aspect is directed at the day itself, or the societal structure that demands the 9-to-5 schedule. Paul is a victim of a society that is largely structured around the chronotype of early risers like Emily.
That's a really good point.
If work started at noon, Paul's routine of staying up until midnight playing guitar would be perfectly healthy and adaptive. But because he has to conform to the 9 a.m. start time, his pursuit of personal autonomy, his music, becomes a self-destructive habit. The dialogue makes us empathize with the night owl trying to survive in a morning person's world.
It makes him incredibly relatable. It shows that he isn't failing at mornings because he lacks discipline. He's failing at mornings because his need for personal fulfillment is clashing with his work schedule.
A very modern dilemma.
But the writers of this source material are brilliant because they don't just leave it there. They don't just present Emily as the flawless ideal and Paul as the struggling artist.
Yeah.
In the third and final part of this series, they execute a narrative pivot that brilliantly humanizes Emily.
They certainly do.
We move into the territory of flaws, felines, and disrupted routines. Because that illusion of perfection we spent the first part analyzing, it shatters.
It does shatter, and quite intentionally. The final dialogue shifts its thematic focus away from established, idealized daily routines and introduces the concept of bad habits.
The bad habits.
Yes. Paul directly asks Emily if she has any bad habits, which is a significant narrative shift. He is inviting the aspirational archetype to step down from her pedestal.
And her answer is the most universal screen trap imaginable.
It really is.
This woman, who we thought was sitting in bed for 5 minutes practicing deep, peaceful, hypnopompic mindfulness. Well, she admits that she often checks her phone as soon as she wakes up. She starts scrolling through social media, and Paul immediately chimes in and says, I do that too, it's hard to stop. It turns out her time to think is actually just doom scrolling.
Including this modern universal struggle is a masterstroke in educational design. Up until this point, Emily might have seemed a bit alien or overly idealized to the average language learner. The unbroken chain of intentions is intimidating.
Very.
By revealing that she too falls victim to the dopamine feedback loop of morning social media, that her 5 minutes of morning thought might sometimes be 5 minutes of staring at a glowing screen, the writers instantly make her relatable. It grounds the entire lesson in reality.
It's so validating to hear the perfect place. Emily admit it is hard to stop scrolling. It completely levels the playing field between her and Paul.
It does. It acknowledges that no matter how good our intentions are or how disciplined our chronotype might be, we all share these modern technological vulnerabilities. Social media algorithms utilize variable ratio reinforcement similar to slot machines.
It makes it so addictive.
Exactly. It makes the habit incredibly difficult to break, even for someone who has the discipline to do 15 minutes of daily morning yoga. By introducing this vocabulary, bad habits, checking my phone, hard to stop, the text is equipping the learner with the language needed to discuss very real contemporary struggles.
But the doom scrolling isn't even the best part of the third transcript.
Oh no, the best part is yet to come.
The absolute best anecdote in this entire source material, the moment that actually made me laugh out loud, is the introduction of Luna the cat.
Yes, Luna.
Paul asks Emily to tell the listeners what happened that specific morning. And Emily shares that Luna acts as her, quote, alarm clock. And this morning, Luna was hungry at 5 a.m., so she literally went and sat right on Emily's face.
The imagery of a cat sitting on someone's face at 5 a.m. is universally humorous, but it also serves a very specific and sophisticated purpose in the narrative structure. We just spent the first transcript establishing Emily's rigorous, highly structured environment. She has her 6:30 a.m. wake up, her yoga, her hazelnut lattes. She is the master of her domain.
Right.
But a hungry cat at 5 a.m. completely disregards human schedules. Luna represents the unpredictable external variable.
Luna does not care about the unbroken chain of peaceful intentions.
I know.
Luna wants breakfast, and Emily even admits to Paul, Yes, she changed my routine today.
This wonderfully highlights the tension between the routines we meticulously plan and the actual messy lives we live. You can design the most perfect schedule on paper, but you cannot control external variables, whether that is a traffic jam, an unexpected email, or in this case, a hungry pet demanding immediate attention.
Life just happens.
In psychological terms, this introduces the concept of psychological flexibility versus rigidity. Emily demonstrates flexibility. She doesn't break down because her 6:30 alarm was superseded by a 5 a.m. cat. She adapts.
Right, she rolls with it.
Furthermore, from a linguistic perspective, using humor dramatically increases memory retention. There is a concept in language acquisition known as the affective filter hypothesis.
I'm not familiar with that term. What does the affective filter mean in this context?
The affective filter hypothesis suggests that a learner's emotional state acts as a filter that can either facilitate or block language learning. If a learner is bored, stressed, or unengaged, the filter is high and they won't retain the vocabulary.
Okay, that makes sense.
But if they are relaxed, engaged, and amused, the filter is low and the language flows in easily. By introducing a funny, highly visual story about a cat sitting on a face, the writers are deliberately lowering the affective filter of the audience. They're using humor to ensure the vocabulary sticks.
It's brilliant. It shows that life happens, even to the Emilys of the world. And honestly, it is the perfect segue because all of this engaging character building, all this talk about scrolling and cats and hazelnut lattes, it's all actually a Trojan horse.
It really is.
It is a setup for the hidden curriculum of the Mr. English Channel broadcast. Let's pivot to the pedagogy here. We have to talk about the actual language mechanics that this whole story was built to support.
That is the true brilliance of these transcripts. As engaging as the narrative is, its primary function is fundamentally educational. The extensive discussion over 3 parts about what Emily and Paul do every day and how often they do it naturally and seamlessly tees up a formal grammar lesson.
The grammar lesson.
Yes. In the 3rd transcript, Emily explicitly breaks the 4th wall, pointing out to the listener that she and Paul have been using many frequency adverbs throughout their conversations.
They pull back the curtain on what they've been doing the whole time.
They do.
Paul jumps right in and helps break down these exact adverbs for the listener. He lists them out very clearly, always, usually, sometimes, and never. And what I found really interesting looking at our source material is that the transcript actually provides the direct translations for these words.
Yes, that's a key detail.
It shows that it's deeply catered to a specific learner audience who needs to map these English concepts to their native understanding.
Providing those translations alongside the English adverbs is a classic pedagogical tool. It relates closely to a concept developed by developmental psychologist Lev Vygotsky.
Lev Vygotsky.
Yes. He introduced the zone of proximal development and the associated strategy of scaffolding. Think of scaffolding in construction. It's the temporary support structure used to hold up a building while it's being built.
Right, so they don't fall down.
Exactly. In education, you give the student temporary supports, like native language translations or visual cues. The translations bridge the gap between what the learner knows and what they are trying to learn. As their English gets stronger, you slowly remove the scaffolding until the linguistic building stands on its own.
That's a great analogy. The translations are the scaffolding. But they don't just hand over the vocabulary and walk away. They immediately put the scaffolding to use. Let's look at the application.
A vital step.
Paul provides the examples to demonstrate the rule. He says, I always brush my teeth, which, good hygiene, Paul. Glad to hear it.
We appreciate that from Paul.
Then he says, I usually wake up early, which I found fascinating given his 8:15 a.m. snooze button habit. I guess early is highly subjective when your alternative is staying up until midnight playing guitar.
Very subjective.
He adds, I sometimes go to the gym, referencing his evening routine. And finally, I never drink coffee at night.
Notice how these example sentences are not random. They are carefully curated to serve a dual purpose. First, they demonstrate the correct syntactical placement of the frequency adverb in standard English, nestled right there between the subject and the main verb.
Subject, adverb.
Exactly. Second, they reinforce the character traits and the narrative continuity we have been discussing for the past 2 dialogues. When Paul says, I sometimes go to the gym, it triggers the learner's memory of the previous discussion about his evening routine.
Tying it all back together.
Yes, it creates a cohesive, closed-loop learning environment. Furthermore, these adverbs introduce the concept of epistemic modality.
Epistemic modality. We might need some scaffolding for that term.
Fair enough. Epistemic modality refers to the way language expresses the speaker's degree of certainty or the frequency of a reality. By learning always versus sometimes, the learner is gaining the tools to express nuance and reliability. It dictates how they convey their reality to the world.
It's a powerful tool to give someone.
It is. Additionally, amid this larger lesson, Emily slips in a very brief, crucial mechanical rule, reminding the listeners to use the preposition at for specific time, such as at 7:0. It is a small detail, but essential for mastering the practical discussion of daily routines.
It's those little mechanical tweaks that make the difference between sounding like a textbook and sounding like a native speaker.
Yeah.
But the lesson doesn't end with Emily's grammar rule.
No, it doesn't.
The show ends with a massive call to action. After delivering the mechanics, Paul addresses the audience directly and says, "You guys did great. Now we have a challenge for you. Write your routine in 3 sentences in the comments."
A direct challenge.
Emily chimes in, saying they love reading the stories, they thank the audience, and Paul hits them with the classic sign-off: like, subscribe, and share with your friends.
This ending raises an important question about educational design in the digital age. Asking the audience to write their routine in 3 sentences in the comments is not merely a tactic to drive engagement for the channel's algorithmic metrics.
Though I'm sure it helps with that.
Oh, it certainly achieves that, but it is also a critical pedagogical tool. It represents the vital transition from passive listening to active application.
You mean they have to actually use the tools, not just look at them?
Exactly. There is a concept in cognitive psychology known as the generation effect. It states that information is better remembered if it is actively generated from one's own mind rather than simply read or heard.
The generation effect.
Yes. By challenging the listener to synthesize the vocabulary of routines, the newly learned frequency adverbs, and the preposition rule into 3 original sentences about their own lives, it cements the knowledge deep in their cognitive architecture.
It locks it in.
It forces the learner to move from simply understanding Emily and Paul's fictional lives to articulating their own reality. It transitions them from consumer to creator.
That's such a powerful way to frame the comment section. It's not just leave a comment for the algorithm, it's generate your own reality to lock in the lesson. It's the ultimate test of the scaffolding.
Truly.
Okay, let's take a breath and look back at the incredible journey we've just been on through these 3 short, unassuming transcripts. We started with Emily's hyper-organized aspirational morning, the 5 minutes of hypnopompic thought, the physiological awakening of the yoga, the very specific, highly curated hazelnut latte.
The unbroken chain of peaceful intentions.
Right. We contrasted that with Paul's incredibly relatable night owl reality. His battle with sleep inertia, his rushing with a banana, his productive gym sessions, and those midnight guitar sessions driven by revenge bedtime procrastination that throw his whole morning schedule out of whack.
The chaotic foil.
And then we saw the illusion of perfection break. We saw the universal disruptors, like the undeniable dopamine pull of doom-scrolling social media, and of course the ultimate external variable. Luna the cat demanding breakfast at 5 a.m. by sitting on a face.
Lowering the effective filter with humor.
All of this, beautifully and intentionally wrapped around a core lesson on frequency adverbs, like always, usually, sometimes, and never, complete with scaffolding and a generational call to action.
For you, the listener, the main takeaway from analyzing these transcripts is a profound lesson in how we process, retain, and relate to information. Well, whether you are literally designing an educational presentation, prepping for a meeting where you need to communicate complex data, or you are just curious about how the content you consume is structured, remember this. Information is most effectively absorbed when it is wrapped in a relatable human narrative.
We don't just remember the rule.
No, we do not just remember the syntactical rule for placing a frequency adverb between a subject and a verb. We remember the grammar because we remember Paul stubbornly playing his guitar until midnight. And we remember Luna, the cat, interrupting the perfect, fictionless morning.
It's the story that sticks.
The human element, with all its flaws and humor, is what makes the technical mechanics stick in our minds.
The human element is everything. We are wired for stories, not spreadsheets. And that brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with today.
A parting question.
Yes. We spent all this time talking about these carefully constructed daily routines. The yoga and oatmeal person versus the late-night guitar person. The aspirational ideal versus the chaotic reality.
The lives we try to build.
Exactly. But I want you to mull this over. If we define ourselves by these routines that we meticulously build. How much of our true identity is actually revealed not by the routines themselves, but by how we react when those routines are inevitably broken?
When life happens.
When the cat sits on your face, or the alarm doesn't go off, or the unbroken chain of peaceful intentions snaps? Who are you then? Are you the routine or are you the reaction? Something to think about. Until next time.